Now, one of the very interesting things to note over here that Pakistani embroiders actually boast of having 2,500 various different unique stitches, and of course collaboration with the French design houses and fashion houses will go a long way in educating them about the new patterns, the color palettes, and then sky's the limit. Ambassador, now coming down to some of the slightly tricky areas, a few of the ambassadors have noted the media scene in Pakistan to be rather exhausting. Case in point being Ambassador Munter going for an early retirement. How has your experience been with the Pakistani media, and do you find this exhausting?
No, I find them asking the right questions, and ambassadors are supposed to answer to questions which are raised. And I think we have to explain what are the policies implemented. We have to be pursuing a regular dialogue with the representative of the media. And if we are not understood, well, we have to try to be more pedagogic and try to explain even more what we have to pass as a message in order to have better understanding. Basically, ambassadors are go-between. We are there to try to explain what are the policy of the governments we are representing to the people in the country we are accredited, and also to try to explain to our own governments what are the points of view of the governments of the government of Pakistan in this specific case. So I think it's part of our job, and media helps us in this regard.
If I may say so, Ambassador, the Washington-Islamabad relationship has suffered from a major do-more hangover, but we're now seeing a 5-year engagement plan with Pakistan and the EU. What can Pakistan expect out of it, and what are perhaps some of the elements that can hurt Pakistan's case in this engagement and integration program?
I think what the European Union countries wanted to do was to have a proper framework for the relationship with Pakistan. Well, we have a trade relationship, and we have been working in order to grant a waiver for 2012-2013 to promote Pakistani export. We are working now on the GSP Plus mechanism beyond 2014 to improve the access of Pakistani goods to the European Union market. But our relationship is not only trade, it's a much more global relationship, and we have with Pakistan a global dialogue on all a range of issues. Lady Ashton was there recently in Pakistan for the first session of our strategic dialogue. We are dealing with a wide range of issues, including political issues, human rights, counterterrorism, all the subjects which are of relevance both for Pakistan and for the European Union countries. So I think the basic idea is not to have a kind of blame game saying you should do this, you should do that, but to discuss very friendly of all the issues which are of common interest, making very clear what are our position, what we are expecting from Pakistan, what Pakistan is expecting us to do, and to discuss very candidly and very frankly of all those issues.
So clarity and of course prompt decision making will help us out. Sometimes it's not really the objective but the delays that cause more hurdles. But a lot must not be lost in translation. And speaking about the activities, the cultural activities of the Alliance, there was recently a number issued by the British Council talking about the number of English-speaking population in Pakistan. Would you have a similar estimate for the French-speaking community, and how else do you want to see this number growing?
Well, we certainly want to see this number growing, even though it's difficult for us to do an estimate of all French-speaking people in Pakistan, because any time I'm going to some new places, I discover some new French-speaking interlocutors. So I will not dare to quote any figure which would be relevant. I think, in fact, what we are doing is two things. On the one hand, of course, to promote French culture, and not to do it alone, but to do it also in the context of Francophonie with other French-speaking countries worldwide. And on the other hand, also to promote the access to French culture for Pakistani students, for Pakistani people. Not necessarily always in French, but trying to make through translation, through presentation of performances in English or in Urdu, some of the tradition of France more present here in Pakistan. The same way, when we send students to France, we are not selecting them only because they speak French. We are selecting them on the basis of their capacity in the area in which they are selected, and we are quite convinced that even if they do not speak French when they go to France, well, they will speak French when coming at the end of their stay in France. So, which is important for us is to develop those exchanges. It is not only to be specific on the promotion of French languages, even though through the alliance, we are trying to have, of course, a large number of students, and to do it in association with Pakistani universities, with Pakistani colleges, with Pakistani high schools.
True. And of course, the business schools are recently taking up French language courses, especially for the business students. But then there are, of course, media that transcends the barriers of language, such as music and theatre. I particularly remember attending various very engaging, very delightful programs at the Alliance in Karachi. Some visiting jazz groups, gypsy jazz groups from France, as well as theatre groups. Will that be an activity continuing?
It's an activity not only continuing but developed very recently for the Day of Music, which was held here in Pakistan, like in France, like in many countries, on the 22nd of June. We had some groups, international music, and which, by the way, is a French idea at the very beginning, more than 20 years ago. We have been inviting some groups of music from France, from Middle East, and we were performing in Karachi, in Lahore, and here in Islamabad. So we are trying to develop those activities, and we are trying to promote better understanding of French music, but also of music of the world, and trying to encompass Pakistani traditions and Pakistani culture in this dialogue. Before being posted to Pakistan last November, I attended in Paris performances by musicians from Sindh and Balochistan in Paris, in Théâtre de la Ville, which is one of the major theatres in Paris, and it was quite a successful event, and I think gave a very positive image of Pakistani culture and traditions.
And the French people, in fact, are renowned world over for being culture and art lovers. You've just mentioned your Sindh visit. We must laud the work that the French architects are doing in preserving some of the archaeological sites in Sindh, which are World Heritage sites. So have you made any progress? How do you see? It's really unfortunate that as we talk, there's been a recent incident of artifacts being smuggled out and then being caught in Karachi. Do you see the Pakistani society and the authorities in Pakistan paying the due diligence and the due respect to this area?
Well, what we are trying to do, once again, is to be helpful. We have some projects going on, and particularly in Sindh, in Bangor, in this area. We have some French teams, some other European country teams there in order to help protect and preserve the heritage of Pakistani culture. We, for very obvious reasons, linked with security, cannot send teams in some part where there could be some risk for their security. So what we are trying to do also is, first of all, to develop exchanges between students, to send professors here, to invite to France some students in the area of archaeology, of protection, of heritage, and to develop this interaction. But we are certainly very committed to continue this cooperation. We have been advocating cultural diversity for decades now. We have been among the promoters of the UNESCO Convention in this regard, and we certainly do see in the protection of the culture, of the historic heritage of Pakistan, one basis for cooperation. We do recognize, like everyone else in the world, that Pakistan was really a place of a very old civilization.
It has been the cradle of some very distinct civilizations, especially
historic ones. And so we certainly are very interested in keeping cooperation in those areas and in helping to protect these civilizations, and which were really some of the cradles of mankind and humanity.
Ambassador, you touched upon the subject of security, and in line with the recent statements from the French authorities, there was some pointing out that, of course, there's a perceived threat because of the activities and camps perhaps still centered in Kabul that may affect the security in France and other countries. So what role do you think Pakistan can play in maintaining and perhaps nurturing the stability in the region? And how do you see Pakistan's role in the upcoming Afghanistan policies?
I think our Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Rabanika, and Mr. Fabius met in Tokyo a few days ago in the margins of this international gathering and conference on Afghanistan. And I think we made very clear during this meeting, and it was a position of the French government, that Pakistan is playing a pivotal role and a key role in the stability of Afghanistan and of this region. We have been advocating regional arrangement encompassing all the countries in the region, all the countries which are concerned by the situation, and we certainly see the role that Pakistan can play. We are quite convinced that the stability in Afghanistan is, of course, in the major interest of Pakistan for its own stability and own security, and we will certainly continue to stand by Pakistan in this regard and supporting a regional cooperation and regional arrangement. We are quite convinced we are going to withdraw our forces from Afghanistan by the end of 2012, our fighting forces, but it doesn't mean at all that we are going to lose any interest in the region. On the very contrary, on the very contrary, we have entered into a strategic partnership agreement with Afghanistan in January 2012. We are going to continue with economic, technological cooperation and training, and we are quite convinced that France, like other European countries, are going to continue to play a role in order to help stabilizing the situation in this part of the world.
Ambassador, you mentioned the year 2012, whereas the US authorities, especially the last statements by Secretary Clinton, has been marking the year for their exit to be 2014. So will this early exit going to ruffle a few feathers? Are your friends unhappy with that?
It's a position of the French government which was explained and debated during the electoral campaign in France. We had a NATO summit in Chicago, which was held in May this year. Our position was made very clear, discussed with our partners and allies within the NATO context. Some of the NATO countries have different dates for withdrawing from Afghanistan. Some have begun, some will do it in 2012. Which is important is to do it in fulfilling the mandate which was ours. Our mandate was there to train and to cooperate with Afghan national forces. So we have very recently given the responsibility of the area we were controlling to the Afghan national forces in accordance with the time frame which was agreed with the Afghan government. So it is not at all for us to withdraw quickly. We do it in coordination with our partners, in coordination with the Afghan government, in accordance with the time frame which was agreed for the transition of the responsibility to the Afghan forces. And furthermore, we will, in 2013, continue to have some French forces in Afghanistan to go ahead with their mission of training.
So in other words, it comes as no surprise. It was already on the cards and it has actually been implemented in phases.
It is going to be implemented. It is implemented in close coordination with our partners. It was discussed by our president. It was discussed with the partners in the NATO summit. So it is not something we are doing on a strictly individual basis. It's something we are doing in close coordination with our partners.
But Ambassador, the reason the troops were there in the first place was for a peaceful, prosperous, stable Afghanistan. How much closer do you think the world has gotten Afghanistan to that dream? And do you feel that Afghanistan today is ready for that exit? Because that happens to be one of the core concerns of Pakistanis, because we've seen it time and again, and there is historical perspective that once the troops leave, there's a huge fear, there's a trust deficit that, perhaps we'll be left to deal with the outcomes and the conclusions all on our own.
Well, I think basically what we have been trying to do is twofold. On the one hand, train Afghan forces.
Yes.
Because we do consider that basically the responsibility for the security of Afghanistan has to be in the hands of the Afghan government and the Afghan forces. If we were to say, well, we will stay indefinitely in Afghanistan, I don't think it will neither help stabilize the area. And the second point is that we are quite convinced that we need to continue economic technical cooperation and assistance to Afghanistan. It's all the agreement we have entered into. The Tokyo conference, which was held a few days ago, really was a good testimony of the commitment of the international community to increase economic cooperation and assistance with Afghanistan, because we are quite convinced that this support is needed in order to have a stable Afghanistan.
While I understand your perspective that this stay cannot be indefinite, but I would once again reiterate, do you feel that they're ready to be independent and on their own?
I think it's point of view we share with Pakistan, that the process of reconciliation in Afghanistan is a process which has to be Afghan-led and Afghan-owned. So we certainly will continue to support the process. True. But it has to be done by the Afghan interested parties.
There has to be ownership of that decision as well. True. And Ambassador, not just on this issue, I must reiterate that Pakistan has indeed found a very strong friend and ally in France over many decades, and we hope that this collaboration goes forward. Once again, a very heartiest congratulations to you on the National Day of France. And before I leave, this is your opportunity to give a message out to the people of Pakistan who are watching you and who are definitely finding this French connection to be very cordial.
Well, thank you very much for those kind words, and I would like really to stress how France is convinced that Pakistan is a key partner for us in this region, not only in this region but worldwide. We are by the time being cooperating with Pakistan very actively in the UN Security Council, in the peacekeeping operation worldwide. So it proves that we have a very wide cooperation in all areas, and I would like really in this National Day of France express the friendship of the French people, say how much the French community living here in Pakistan do welcome the spirit of hospitality, the spirit of cooperation shown by Pakistani friends and people, and how much we want to have a multifaceted cooperation in all areas and a global partnership with Pakistan, because we are quite convinced that the relationship will strengthen and that Pakistan will continue to play a pivotal role in this part of the world and in world affairs in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and those kind words and that very sincere intent will indeed go a long way in bringing the two countries together. With this, we end this exclusive conversation with the Ambassador of France to Pakistan. We'd love to hear from you, the feedback and comments on this interview. For this, you can reach me on my Facebook page. It goes by my name, Sidra Iqbal. Until next time, take good care of yourself. Allah Hafiz.